I came across a post online. After flirting online with my crush for 3 months, I found out I'd actually been talking to his girlfriend. I vented about this dramatic twist to my best friend, but her eyes flickered guiltily. That night, I caught her kissing Augustine. She said, "Don't make my identity as his girlfriend public. I'm afraid it would break her heart." A group of spoiled rich kids laughed and placed bets, saying I'd willingly become the other woman. I pretended to know nothing and changed my usually conservative style, publicly declaring I would confess to my crush in 1 month. The heart-hunting game had officially begun. Chapter 1. Julie, when are you planning to confess to Augustine? Carolina propped her chin in her hand and looked at me. Her blood-red nails were like a snake's tongue. I glanced at the sexy black lingerie in her hand and raised an eyebrow. In a month, after you return from your trip abroad. Carolina grinned playfully and hooked the lingerie strap with her finger. You said it looked good last time, so I bought it. Thought I'd try it today. Don't you dare sneak off with any guy behind my back. I must be there when you confess. I nodded in agreement, my smile as gentle and warm as always. Carolina didn't suspect a thing, because in her eyes, I was never a threat. After all, I always listened to her. Back then, she told me, "You're really pretty. Don't need makeup. You've got that natural, fresh out of water look. Augustine will definitely go for your type." So I followed her advice, straightened my wavy hair, wore black-rimmed glasses to look quiet and studious, and dressed in outfits that hid my figure. I played the ugly duckling, making her look even more radiant for those 3 months. During that time, I pretended not to know anything, playing the perfect contrast, making her bloom like a rose. Carolina looked at my dull outfit, her eyes pausing on the slight dark spots on my face. Her smile deepened as she pinched my earlobe. There's a party tomorrow night. Augustine will be there too. There'll be a lot of people. You're timid. If anything goes wrong, come to me. I nodded obediently, replying with a soft, "Okay." With the crisp sound of the door closing, the rose-scented perfume and the clicking of high heels faded from my nose. Carolina was a good actress. If I hadn't accidentally caught her straddling Augustine's lap and kissing him last time, I might have really believed she cared about me. I opened the video I had saved on my phone that night. The blaring music crashed into my ears. Augustine hooked her spaghetti strap with his finger, eyes filled with desire, completely at odds with his usual aloof image at school. Her wine-red mini skirt was lifted, revealing a large stretch of pale, snow-white skin. The room erupted in excited cheering and shrieks. "Kiss! Kiss!" Little Blockhead would be heartbroken if she saw this. Laughter burst from the crowd. Why bring her up? Such a buzzkill. She's impossible to ask out. What's she even acting so high and mighty for? Carolina's way better. The little blockhead they mentioned was me. I opened my phone and scrolled through my most recent chat with Augustine. 5 minutes ago, he had sent me a cute cat sticker with the caption, "Good night." I flipped through our 3 months of chats, comparing his message style with the sticker usage, and confirmed one thing. All the flirty messages were from Carolina, because Carolina liked to break long sentences into multiple texts, and she always added stickers. Augustine, on the other hand, always wrote full, single-sentence messages, complete with punctuation. They all knew the truth. I was the only one left in the dark. Chapter 2. Expressionless. I cut off the video and sat at the desk, making meticulous plans. I had been playing down my looks for a while now, using my shy personality as an excuse to avoid formally meeting any of them. I spent 3 months with the dedication of someone preparing for the college entrance exam, digging up every bit of information on this group of rotten rich boys, and I even took extra acting classes. The final month was more than enough to deal with them. I held up the bar photo, comparing it to the data in my archive. Augustine had 3 close friends in his circle, all of whom were at the bar last night. The guy who called me a block of wood was Dominic, Augustine's younger brother, a hot-headed rookie with no exes and an impulsive nature, exactly the kind of person who's easiest to manipulate. But that was only a facade. Carolina had used him as her way in to get close to Augustine. She thought she had succeeded. But in reality, she was nothing more than a clown in someone else's script. That night, Dominic pretended to compliment Carolina while constantly putting me down, calling me the blockhead over and over. Carolina laughed so hard she almost fell over. never noticing the look of contempt in Dominic's eyes. No one respects someone who betrays their own friend. Carolina had already lost from the very beginning. The one making out with an influencer in the corner of the couch was Santiago, Augustine's childhood friend. He was into extreme sports. Didn't do girlfriends, only hookups. The filthiest kind of man. Always fanning the flames and stirring up drama. He was the one who added me and invited me to the bar last night. I sent him a voice message. Sorry. I was already asleep by 11. Didn't see your message. Then I didn't bother checking his reply and tossed my phone aside. Men like Santiago don't need to be pursued. Just leave them hanging. If he's interested, he'll come crawling to me like a dog. Playboys like him, who've seen more women than they've owned shirts, looking for sincerity in his eyes is like digging for gold in a pile of crap. Chapter 3. My phone lit up with a new message. Augustine, Julia. I'll come pick you up tomorrow. The message came from Augustine himself, only half an hour after Carolina had left the dorm. It seemed she didn't succeed in sleeping with Augustine tonight after all. After all, if he was going to see me tomorrow, he wouldn't risk ruining his carefully maintained unattainable gentleman image in front of me by spending the night with a woman. Around midnight, Carolina sent me a photo of herself in black lingerie. I replied with a blank face and just 2 words, looks good. During the time I was interacting with Augustine, I kept complimenting him as being like a cold, rare alpine flower, distant and unreachable. So in order to keep that image alive, he had to give up much of his social life and even adjusted his clothing style to match my preferences. People tend to become exceptionally patient when they're doing something shady. Augustine kept trying to learn what I liked. When he found out I was into handmade woven bracelets, he immediately bought one and claimed he made it himself. He didn't realize the seller was a relative of mine. I exposed him on the spot and deleted him from my contacts without hesitation, unwilling to lose the bet. Augustine actually went and learned the traditional knotting craft just to make one by hand. Because of that incident, I earned the nickname Blockhead among his friends. But I didn't regret it. Money meant nothing to them. Time was what mattered most. That bracelet became the anchor point I gave him. From then on, every request I made, Augustine never brushed it off again, at least before the bet ended. He forced himself to fulfill every one of my wishes with patience. From handmade bracelets to fondant cakes, he learned everything from scratch. If I hadn't known the truth, I might have been touched. After all, who wouldn't be moved by someone rich and attentive, chasing them with such effort? Especially when he wore the perfect mask of good looks and a gentle temper. That bracelet, a soft sky blue, now rested on my wrist, perfectly matching my outfit. I still didn't reply to his message. I simply stood before my wardrobe, picking through outfits, and finally pulled out a long white dress. My initial persona was that of a pure, untouched white flower, the kind of image that made these morally corrupt men let their guard down the quickest. I snapped a photo of the dress and sent it to Augustine. After carefully adjusting my tone, I recorded and sent a voice message in a sweet, syrupy voice. What do you think of this dress? Augustine, looks nice. Just 2 careless and fast words. I imagined the annoyed look on his face behind them. I wasn't surprised or hurt. I simply played the role of a girl deeply caught up in the whirlpool of love. Then I'll wear this to meet you tomorrow. Augustine, sure. Augustine's voice was lazy, indifferent, like everyone else in his world. Nothing really mattered to him. He deliberately lowered his voice, practiced at creating the illusion of affection. He was a seasoned player. Carolina and I were both just players in one of his love games. Santiago had made a bet with him, wondering how long it would take Augustine to win over the new sister duo at school. The wager was 30 million. Carolina had already been conquered. Now, it was just me left. Augustine thought the game was too easy and raised the difficulty himself. He said he'd make one of us willingly become the other woman. The one he picked to willingly become the mistress was me. To make his campaign smoother, Carolina had already been shipped overseas with a one-way plane ticket. And now, he planned to take the next month to completely win me over. Chapter 4. I slipped into the seemingly plain white dress, admiring my reflection in the mirror. The impeccable tailoring perfectly traced the curves of my body. I removed my glasses, revealing a pair of captivating, fox-like eyes. Then, with a waterproof eyeliner pen, I added a small beauty mark at the corner of my eye, an extra touch of allure. Men are visual creatures. After all, for our first official meeting, I had to leave behind a lasting, thrilling impression. Before heading out, I carefully adjusted every inch of my outfit, ensuring even the tiniest edges were smooth and wrinkle-free. Wrinkles degrade the texture of a garment, they make you look sloppy, and destroy the vibe. I had no earrings, no accessories whatsoever. I appeared utterly simple, but every detail was intentional. The reflection in the mirror was flawless. I kept adjusting angles to examine myself until I confirmed there wasn't a single visible blemish. I looked out the window. Augustine was already downstairs, framed like a painting, muted colors, distant and faded, next to a bush of blooming hibiscus flowers. Some people are simply born at the top of the pyramid. No wonder he was so confident. He truly believed he could conquer a plain little duckling like me in a month. A trace of mockery crossed my eyes. But men always have to pay a price for their arrogance. Carolina had always been afraid I'd compete with her, so she rarely talked to them about my background. She only told them my family was deep in debt. As a result, everyone still thought I was just a poor little white flower. That suited me just fine. It's the perfect identity to play the fool and take down the tiger. Chapter 5. I ran my fingers through my hair, silky smooth after tens of thousands in salon care, and smiled with pure innocence. Augustine. I appeared with a cheerful smile the moment he was caught off guard. I gently took his hand, my movements intimate. Instinctively, Augustine held my hand back. His lashes fluttered twice. Julia? He only spoke my name after spotting the familiar sky blue bracelet on my wrist, and I caught the flash of astonishment in his eyes. Augustine was a master at creating atmosphere, so he quickly regained his composure. With a slight smile, he looked down and said, "Julia, you look beautiful today." His eyes lingered briefly on the exposed sliver of my waist. He chuckled softly. "I'm not just saying that." I played along, blushing shyly and tugging at the corner of his sleeve. "Augustine, are you taking me to meet your friends today? What if they don't like me?" "They won't. Julia's far too adorable for that." Augustine's looks were dangerously deceiving. He gazed at me tenderly, as if I were his beloved. But if he truly cared about me, why would he bring someone who supposedly hates parties to a club full of hedonistic socialites? That was one of his signature tactics. The club was strictly members only, packed with everything from shooting ranges and racetracks to horse riding and golf, every luxury imaginable. But it was clearly not the kind of place someone of my supposed background should have access to. What Augustine was using on me was classic PUA manipulation and control. He'd first show me the gap between our social classes, then swoop in to play the hero, rescuing me from discomfort to display his charm and power. That's how he made people fall for him. Chapter 6. Augustine placed a card into my palm, not giving me a chance to refuse before saying, "Julia, I have something to take care of. If anything comes up, just use this and talk to the manager." I nodded. Here in this den of socialites and playboys, luxury brand logos were everywhere. My overly simple outfit made me stick out like a sore thumb, but that stark contrast was exactly why they could spot me with just one glance. "Well, now, that's rare, an unfamiliar face." Santiago was the first to speak, his tone dripping with flirty arrogance. He walked up to me, eyes raking over my body from head to toe, judgmental, teasing, mocking, with a trace of curiosity. All around, men and women cast their gazes at me. I was long used to it. To me, this kind of attention was nothing new. "She looks like a total seductress," Dominic followed up, his voice laced with malice, loud enough for the whole room to hear. His tone was sharp, but his eyes remained locked on my face. When they met the teardrops glistening in my eyes, his gaze abruptly shifted away. "I hate women who cry all the time," he muttered gruffly, folding his arms and taking an exaggerated step back, as if in disgust. But I knew for sure, Dominic didn't actually hate my appearance. What no one realized was that my real target today was Dominic. They were betting I'd willingly become the side piece. Let's see who ends up losing their pride in the end. Chapter 7. I shifted slightly, adjusting my stance so that Dominic could clearly see me, nervous and uneasy, like a helpless little thing. Those acting classes didn't go to waste. Our teacher taught us how to cry in the most captivating way, tears like dewdrops resting delicately on a rose petal, shimmering and on the verge of falling. The more people watched, the more they waited for that single drop to fall. I had practiced in front of the mirror thousands of times, studying footage again and again. When I saw Dominic walking toward me, I knew my performance was working, but real life isn't a script, there are always surprises. Dominic stopped midway. Santiago cut in unexpectedly. He grabbed my chin, and when he saw the slight moisture in my eyes, a frightening hunger to destroy flickered in his gaze. A sharp pain pricked my jaw, and I let out a soft gasp. Santiago had a hint of a sadistic streak, and my reaction seemed to light up something dark in him. His eyes gleamed with perverse excitement. Pretty voice, too. His fingers kept tracing my jawline. I felt utterly disgusted. I knew right then, Santiago just wanted to see me cry. Filthy dog. I cursed him silently. The pressure on my chin increased, and I began a mental countdown. Just then, I caught Augustine appearing in my peripheral vision, his face cold and stiff. Without hesitation, I punched Santiago square on the nose, then dove into Augustine's arms like a frightened bird returning to its nest. Sobbing as I called out his name, Augustine. Santiago hadn't seen that coming. He clutched his nose with a groan, while a burning light lit up in his eyes. That predatory gaze behind me followed me closely, like a wolf tracking its target. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Dominic's footsteps pause mid-stride. Caught in hesitation, I looked down to adjust my expression, then tightened my grip on Augustine's sleeve, shaking, terrified, and fragile. Augustine bent down to comfort me. Just as he lowered his head, I lifted mine. Our lips brushed briefly, my lips against his chin. A fleeting touch. Augustine froze, but I acted like I hadn't noticed. Still trembling with fear, my long, silky black hair slipped through his fingers. This performance, the tearful storm, was something only Augustine got to witness. He crouched down and gently wiped the tears from my face one by one. Then he turned to Santiago with a cold voice. What exactly did you do to Julia just now? Me having physical contact with someone else clearly hadn't been part of Augustine's expectations. When he saw the red mark on my chin, his expression darkened. His gaze lingered there for several seconds, and a flicker of agitation passed through his eyes. Even his speech sped up. This wasn't love. It was just possessiveness. Plain and simple, the kind that men like him confuse for affection. The desire to dominate and control, that's the inherent flaw of these so-called upper-class young masters. It was just a joke, Santiago replied lazily, twirling a strand of my hair he had pulled off earlier. In his world, this level of boundary crossing wasn't even worth noting. After all, these men had no problem sharing a girlfriend. I touched my head and tugged on Augustine's hand like a wronged little girl. Augustine's gaze toward Santiago turned even colder. He gently patted my head to calm me. Then Dominic suddenly spoke up from the side. Bro, give her to me after a month. I think she looks familiar. Augustine's hand froze midair. Chapter 8. Dominic spoke that sentence in French. I looked at him and blinked slowly. Santiago snorted and sneered at Dominic in a mocking tone. What a lousy excuse. Just admit you're into her. She looks familiar. Yeah, right. After mocking Dominic, he turned to Augustine. This one's a rare type. How about we cancel the bet? You back out first and let me and your little brother have some fun? I mean, aren't you all over Carolina lately anyway? Dominic's brows furrowed slightly, a flicker of coldness flashing in his eyes. Then he cursed in French. You're full of shit. That dumb idea of yours got Augustine blocked by Blockhead when he used my alt account to chat with her. Santiago's face darkened. Why the hell are you blaming me? How was I supposed to know she'd be such a pain? She blocked him over a bracelet. Seriously? And didn't you hate girls who looked like her? Why are you suddenly interested? Dominic tugged at his collar, remaining silent, but his gaze locked onto me, deep and searching. Santiago scoffed again, his voice openly mocking. Dominic, better be careful. Man, what if you get played by the same type twice? Fool me once. Shame on you. Fool me twice. Maybe let me break this little kitten in first. Augustine's face went dark as he saw them arguing over me. The arm wrapped around my waist suddenly tightened, and he cursed sharply. What the hell is wrong with you guys? No one knew that Dominic's type, the sweet and innocent kind, was actually his greatest weakness. There was a rumor that back in high school, Dominic had fallen for a girl in a white dress through an online relationship. But not only did he fail to win her over, he was scammed out of millions. Since then, word spread that Dominic hated the innocent-looking type. No girl ever dared wear a white dress in front of him, not even Carolina, who deliberately avoided that style. But really, How can anyone fight what they're instinctively drawn to? And as it happened, my target from the very beginning was him. Augustine wanted to make me the other woman. Funny thing is, I had the exact same plan for him. After all, the more people in the game, the merrier. I met Dominic's eyes and gave him a shy, bashful smile. His gaze darkened further. As for the truth, that the person chatting with me from Augustine's account was actually Dominic using an alternate account? I'd known that from the start. In fact, I figured it out even before Carolina did. Because, as fate would have it, the girl who once scammed Dominic out of millions was me. Chapter 9. Back in middle school, Dominic and I were in the same class. He sat behind me. During every class, he'd either shove his desk into my back or tug on my braids. Dominic relied on his privileged family background. No one dared to mess with him, so he did whatever he pleased. I complained to the teacher, but all I got was vague reassurance and no action. I used to have a fiery temper. We got into a fight once, and he ended up pushing me down the stairs. My leg was injured, and it left a permanent issue. From then on, I could never pursue the dance I loved. His family, perched high above everyone else, wanted to settle things with money. Faced with the burden of medical bills, my family agreed. No one cared about the grievances between children. Adults made choices based on their own interests. I refused to accept it. I argued, fought with my mother. If Dad were here, he'd never treat me like this. I don't want the money, I just want Dominic to apologize. You've always demanded I be the best at everything. So why are you making me transfer schools now? I slammed the door and left home. I never answered her calls again. The last thing I received was a text message. Mom might not be able to stay with you much longer. There's 800,000 yuan in the account. It's everything I've saved over the years. Go find your father. It was only much later that I understood. She accepted the money because she knew she didn't have much time left. She'd saved everything she could for me. But after my mother died, the Jean family never wired the money as promised. I had no choice but to find the father I'd never met. Using the acting talent I was seemingly born with, I quickly won over his sympathy, his very limited, very awkward version of fatherly love. From then on, I hid my true nature, acted with restraint, pleased everyone, and studied them all. When I realized my stepmother wasn't nearly as kind as she pretended to be, I asked my father if I could study abroad, to get away and lie low. As fate would have it, in my first year overseas, I ran into Dominic Jean again, and I recognized him instantly. I always felt he was the root of all my misfortune, so the moment I realized who he was, I began laying the groundwork. It took me over a year to trap him in my web. What a twisted fate. Both brothers ended up trying to ruin me. And the funniest part? The boy who used to bully me really did fall for me, completely, hopelessly. In the years after I cut all contact, Dominic kept creating new email accounts to send me letters. To this day, my inbox holds over 1,000 unread emails. He would send and unsend messages repeatedly, hoping to catch some sign that I had seen them. Young love is always burning hot and brutally direct, but who would ever crave the love of a person like that? If I hadn't saved myself, my whole life would have been ruined because of him. Chapter 10. The sudden ring of a phone interrupted my thoughts. At the exact moment Augustine's screen lit up, I caught a glimpse of a familiar profile picture. Carolina, doing a loyalty check? Augustine silently pressed the power button and locked the screen. The phone kept vibrating, and a flicker of impatience crossed his eyes. Not picking up? Santiago's voice rang out. Augustine shot him a warning glare, then turned to Dominic. Keep an eye on Julia. Don't mess with her. He didn't even realize he was already subconsciously trying to protect me. I lowered my head, carefully adjusting my expression. As expected, this face still worked wonders. Not surprising, considering how much I spent on skincare. As Dominic approached, I brushed my hair aside, exposing the small beauty mark on my earlobe. He was close, too close, past the line of what's considered safe. I could hear his breathing change, from calm to slightly rushed. Who are you? There was a glimmer of hope and longing in his voice. I had once sent him a photo of my side profile, only showing my earlobe. Right at that spot was this very mole. He had told me it was beautiful, that if he ever saw it again, he'd recognize me immediately. And yet, On the day we were meant to meet. I ran off with the money. I finished adjusting my hair and smiled sweetly, innocently. I'm Julia. Didn't your brother introduce me to you? At the mention of my name, Dominic turned his head awkwardly to the side. These past few days, he'd cursed that name more than once, calling me blockhead. You like my brother? What school were you at before? Did you have someone you liked before this? Just like the old days, Dominic couldn't stay patient for long. Barely a pause before he fired off questions like a machine gun. His eyes locked onto mine, trying to read something, anything. I didn't flinch. I met his gaze, answering softly and gently. Yes, I've liked him for a long time. How long is a long time? Dominic pressed further, grabbing my sleeve, clearly losing his composure. Santiago's eyes had been on us the whole time. Noticing that something was off between Dominic and me, he gave a knowing, amused smirk. What's this? An interrogation? Just because she's wearing a white dress, you're asking her who she is? White dress, I echoed, tilting my head slightly. Am I not allowed to wear one? Dominic? I leaned in close to his ear, dropping my voice to the barest whisper. You didn't recognize me, liar. Dominic's pupils shrank, his eyes freezing in place. Chapter 11. Right after I said that, Dominic grabbed my wrist in front of everyone and dragged me out of the room. In the scuffle, we knocked over a wine glass. The glass shattered. Gasps rippled through the crowd as the situation spiraled out of control. Inside a private room with no one else around, I pushed him away. Let go. I stared at him angrily. Dominic pinned my arm, voice urgent. Is it you? Before I could answer, he gritted his teeth and said, You've got some nerve, coming back. Logically speaking, someone like me, who had swindled him out of millions in donations and disappeared, shouldn't dare to admit my identity. But this time, he was in the wrong. After all, they used the same burner account that Dominic once chatted with me through. So now a new lie begins. If I could fool him so thoroughly back then, now, with old scores and fresh wounds added, he couldn't blame me for what's coming. I softened my tone, my voice low and gentle. I came back to repay the money. Repay? Dominic frowned deeply. Back then, he had stormed out after fighting with his family and flown abroad with only a few million in savings. I pretended to be a perfect confidant, gentle, understanding, always knowing what to say. I comforted him, guided him, and made him pour his heart out to me. He told me he was unloved, like an orphan, so I told him I was working 3 jobs to support him. Every month, I sent him gifts, encouragement, and care, down to the smallest detail. That's the power of online romance. When you're cloaked in anonymity, it's easy for people to project perfection onto you. They become addicted to fantasy, convinced they've found their soulmate. He never stopped to think, how could a poor student working 3 jobs have time to chat with him for hours? Eventually, he said he wanted to start a new life with me. So when I told him I was short on money, he gritted his teeth and wired me everything he had, telling me to come find him. At the time, I had no idea it was all he had. Once I got the money, I cut contact and disappeared. Only now did I learn that, too proud to return home, he ended up washing dishes in a restaurant for months just to survive. Luckily, I always leave myself an escape route, so I looked straight into his eyes and said, I was in surgery at the time. That's why I couldn't contact you. I was afraid the surgery would fail, that I'd die. I didn't want you to be sad. So I deleted you. I'm sorry. This card has the money I've saved over the years. See if it's enough. Then I handed him the card. The pin is your birthday. The doctor from that surgery was my cousin. I had already prepared the story in advance. No matter how Dominic investigates, all he'll find is a record that I was in critical condition from a major surgery back then. Dominic took the card. His fingers turned pale from gripping it, eyes red with suppressed anger. He spat each word out, one by one. So, you're giving this back, just to cut ties with me? I pushed him away, feigning indifference. I told you I'd come back for you, but you didn't believe me. Maybe it's fate, I said with a forced smile. I mistook your brother for you. That's all. I was going to look for you, but I was afraid you'd hate me. Now I'm with your brother. Maybe it's best to just let it be. I'm giving you back the money. After all, It's not like you ever really liked me. Tears welled up in my eyes. And then, I heard it. The sound of the card snapping in his hand. Dominic? I looked at him softly. Don't be mad, we're all family now. We'll still see each other every day. His expression darkened. Something dangerously repressed beneath the surface. Just as someone knocked on the door, he suddenly bent down and bit my waist. Hard, leaving a mark. I gasped. But the sound was muffled as he covered my mouth. Dominic locked the door behind us. Family? He sneered. Not a chance in hell. With his tall, broad frame, he blocked any path I might have used to escape. Chapter 12. A sharp pain stunned the corner of my mouth. My body stumbled, crashing into a table and chair. I tried to push Dominic away, but he pinned my hand, locking me within the narrow space. The knocking outside paused for a moment. We were so close. I could hear both our breathing, heavy, uneven. My eyes were red, and I lowered my voice. Then what do you want me to do? Dominic? I'm already with your brother. We can't do this. Dominic froze mid-motion, under his tousled hair. His eyes had turned completely dark. With him? You call that being together? He said, after we graduate, we'd get married. Dominic let out a bitter laugh. Married? Please. You told me the same thing back then. We picked out an apartment together. Remember? I bought the place and you said to write both our names on the lease. I broke the card. The knocking outside became more urgent. Dominic released my wrist. I tried to step back, but my legs buckled and I fell into his arms again. I looked up at him with innocent, wide eyes and slowly steadied myself. Then I pointed toward the cabinet. Maybe you should hide for now? Dominic scoffed, pulling the hem of my dress down to cover the bite mark on my waist. Hide? If we're talking seniority, the one outside should be the one hiding. The door clicked as a key turned in the lock. Augustine walked in, face cold, eyes sweeping sharply between Dominic and me. I was sitting on the countertop. My shoe hit the floor with a soft clack. Both Dominic and Augustine bent down at the same time. As I leaned over to pick up my shoe, I just so happened to reveal the pale skin of my waist and the very visible bite mark. The air fell silent. Dominic, you crossed the line. Augustine knelt, picking up the shoe. His expression was icy as he looked at his brother. In Augustine's mind, I was the picture of innocence. That was the image I had so carefully built for him, one he never questioned. So he wouldn't suspect me. He would place all the blame squarely on Dominic. I didn't need to explain anything. I just had to grab onto his sleeve and act vulnerable. Still kneeling, Augustine clumsily helped me put my shoe back on. Then he concealed the dark emotions in his eyes and spoke calmly. I'll take you out for a bit. Okay. I replied sweetly. The lingering traces of my tears made my voice even softer than usual. Augustine glanced around at the disheveled room. A shadow passed through his gaze. As we walked down the hallway, his voice broke the silence, steady and unhurried. Julia, have you and Dominic met before? And no, not really, I stammered, then quickly clung to his sleeve, face still damp with leftover tears. I see. Just as I expected. Augustine didn't press further. He had his own ways of digging up the truth about my connection to Dominic, and he would find it, how I once poured out deep affection toward his brother. And knowing Augustine, someone as proud and controlling as him, he would never tolerate being someone else's substitute. Chapter 13. This wasn't how the script was supposed to go. There was no hint of romance in the air, only an increasingly sharp tension. Like smoke before a fire, the dramatic love triangle never unfolded. Instead, out on the horse track, a battle between men had begun, and I was just the quiet, beautiful ornamental flower on the sidelines, watching them fight, applauding whoever came out on top. Their competitive instincts had been fully awakened. What started as a straightforward test of skill turned into a battle of dominance. And the moment I cheered for Dominic, Augustine's carefree mask cracked. Normally, Augustine maintained the facade of gentleness, but on the track, with no one to impress, his cold, ruthless expression showed his true self. He could never allow Dominic to outshine him, especially not in front of an audience. There could only be one heir to the Jean family. Augustine Jean had always demanded that everyone's attention belonged to him, and Dominic Jean, as the younger son, had long been quietly yielding, maintaining the fragile balance between them. But really, who would willingly live as their older brother's shadow day and night. Dominic had run away from home once before, after a fight with their parents over favoritism. Dominic's flaws were obvious. Augustine's were hidden, and people always tend to prefer those who are better at wearing masks, those who know how to charm. I had once filled that void in Dominic with the perfect illusion, posing as someone who understood his pain and knew exactly how to comfort him. I touched the blue bracelet on my wrist and watched the match, a cold smirk curling at my lips. As expected, Augustine won first place. He dismounted and gave Dominic a chilling glance of superiority. Santiago and Dominic followed behind. Dominic walked down with a dark expression, silent, frustration buried deep in his furrowed brows. As an observer, I had seen everything. Dominic should have won. But just as he was about to overtake Augustine, he hesitated, like always. Horses are sensitive, intelligent creatures. They pick up on their riders' emotions instantly. In that single moment of hesitation, Dominic's horse slowed down. After the match ended, his horse snorted in protest. I noticed it had been injured while leaping over one of the obstacles. Traditionally, the winner is celebrated with flowers. I stood up, the hem of my dress swirling in a graceful arc. I asked for a flower wreath and began walking toward Augustine. He looked pleased with his victory, smiling as he reached out to accept the wreath, only to watch me walk right past him. I placed the wreath gently on Dominic's horse. Dominic looked stunned, not understanding why the flowers were here. Still finished the race despite being hurt. What a brave little one. I cast a teasing glance at Dominic's hand, where fresh red marks from the rain showed he had gripped them far too tightly. He reflexively withdrew his hand. His ears flushed deep red. The fierce wild dog from earlier had suddenly turned docile. Then, Dominic's horse nudged me gently in the waist, causing me to stumble right into his arms. He instinctively caught me, but I pulled away, lifting my hands to show they were empty. "Oh, you want flowers too?" I smiled playfully at Dominic. "Then next time, try winning first place, Julia." Augustine's voice came, no longer calm and restrained. I met his gaze and saw the storm brewing in his dark eyes. "It's too late, Augustine." I cut him off sweetly, tilting my head. "Take me back to campus, will you?" Chapter 14. My cousin called me. He said the Jean brothers had already come to the hospital, asking about my hospitalization back then. He described me as a delicate, tragic little thing. He even made up a story about how I'd spend my days staring blankly at the screen in my hospital bed, and how I wrote a final letter to Dominic before my surgery. Without hesitation, I wrote a full 1,000-word farewell letter, sentimental and tear-jerking, and asked my cousin to pass it on to Dominic. Being sharp as ever, my cousin also accidentally let Augustine catch wind of how deeply I had once loved Dominic. That very night, Dominic showed up with reddened eyes, carrying the old letters he once wrote me. Reading them out loud, one by one, he read the whole night, pouring his heart out. Meanwhile, I had already fallen asleep in the hotel. Before I dozed off, I rubbed my sore ears and thought, if I'd known this whole lie would lead to this, I wouldn't have bothered making it up. When I woke up, Dominic was still there. He had slept on the floor. I had the bed. Soft kisses landed on my neck, his possessiveness completely unfiltered. Desire surged within him, but he didn't dare move any further. "Don't leave, Marks. I'm meeting your brother later." I pushed his face away. Last night, my cousin had messaged me that Augustine had burned all the letters in a rage. Who knew if he'd completely lose it when we met? Going toe-to-toe with someone as scheming as Augustine was exhausting, unlike the one in front of me, who was so easy to fool. Dominic sat pitifully at the edge of the bed, crouched, his black hair messy from tossing and turning. "Julia, just like me, okay? But I was the one who mistook someone else for you." I tapped his forehead and gave him my usual soft smile. "Dominic, I'm sorry. Time's up. Take me back to class. Your brother treats me very well. I can't betray him." A flash of darkness crossed Dominic's eyes, but if he exposed Augustine's lies, he'd be revealing his own too. He didn't dare bring up the bet, so he swallowed his jealousy and rage, went downstairs, and canceled one of the 2 room cards. It seemed the 2 brothers had reached some silent agreement. Augustine would find me on campus during the day, and Dominic would take over at night. Not that I minded. It saved me quite a bit of effort. Chapter 15. Julia. I'm the one you met first. I'm not letting go. Dominic sent me 2 messages. I casually examined my freshly filed smooth nails and ignored them. Lately, I'd heard whispers about Dominic trying to claim more company shares. But based on what I knew about the brothers, there was no way Dominic could win against Augustine within the next 3 years. As for Augustine, he hadn't given up on the bet either. He was still stringing Carolina along while trying to get closer to me. When I mentioned wanting to see the sunrise, he immediately invited me to go hiking. But in truth, it wasn't that I wanted to hike. I just already knew everything about what Augustine liked. In the remaining month, all I needed to do was let Augustine believe I was falling for him. The more convinced he was of my affection, the harder he would crash when he realized he was just a stand-in. He had spent so many years crushing Dominic beneath him, he'd never accept defeat. He'd only grow more ruthless in trying to win. Chapter 16. Of course. I also dug up a few interesting things. For example, Augustine hates dogs. During our hike, I saw him go out of his way to avoid a tiny, palm-sized white puppy, but dogs always seem to know exactly who's afraid of them. When I picked the little thing up, he showed a rare crack in his composure. It piqued my interest. A good hunter never ignores a single clue. I deliberately held the puppy up to him. Looks like a stray. Its legs hurt. That day, Augustine seemed distracted, his mood was low, and his attitude toward me was colder than usual. Carolina once told me Augustine hated dogs, but something didn't add up. So I took the dog home and sent a photo to Dominic. It looked so pitiful. I decided to keep it. Dominic replied, "If you like it, we can raise it together. Just don't bring it near my brother. He hates dogs." Really? Didn't seem like it. You told me once that someone in your family was devastated when a little white dog died. Doesn't this one look a lot like that? Dominic said. It does. If you really like it, we can raise it together. I do like puppies, but I should ask Augustine first. After all, he's the one who took it to the vet. Dominic, would you mind adopting another one too? Let me ask Augustine. Dominic went silent. To my surprise, Augustine actually took the puppy in himself and even gave it a name. Chapter 17. Anyone who's been in love knows. The most addictive stage is the uncertainty, the chase. Dopamine thrives on the thrill of the unknown. Once the relationship is defined, the excitement starts to fade. Augustine began taking me with him to every event and social setting. He'd sometimes drop little hints about his interests, and once he noticed I could keep up with anything he mentioned, his texts came in noticeably more frequently. And I kept sending every update about Augustine straight to Carolina. At first, she didn't take it seriously until I sent her a screenshot. I texted. Augustine said the puppy was adorable. Too bad I can't keep it. So I left it with him for now. Didn't you say he was scared of dogs? He actually seems to like this one. Oh, and guess what? He gave it a name, Doughball. LOL. After that message, Carolina didn't reply for a long time. She had once said she wanted to adopt a Samoyed with someone she loved. But later, she deleted all the dog photos from her phone. I followed up with, Carolina, do you think he'd say yes if I confessed? The moment I sent it, she replied fast. No, wait until I come back. I responded casually, okay. Chapter 18. I lay on my desk, head down, while Augustine sat beside me, diligently taking notes. It was almost impressive. Really, this man who was supposedly too busy to be seen on campus, now following me from classroom to classroom, even showing up to 8 a.m. lectures. To be fair, he learned fast. Even though we weren't in the same major, he could still catch the key points in every lecture he sat through with me. We had become inseparable. Plenty of students were asking about our relationship. Some, after hearing we'd first connected through an online fling, even tried to ask for Augustine's WeChat between classes. But all of them struck out, rejected and dismissed. Augustine stared at me intently. Julia, I thought you'd be upset, but you don't seem to mind when other people approach me. There was a wounded look in his eyes. I sighed. Ah, here comes the performance. His expression hovered between sincere and staged. Honestly, I had to admire Augustine's drive to win. His competitive streak ran deep. He didn't even bother hiding his feelings in public anymore, very out of character for him. Julia, do you like me? I was halfway dozing off in class when he suddenly hit me with that kind of existential question. Usually, I'd respond hesitantly to keep his curiosity burning, but now, it was time to accelerate the pace. I looked into his eyes, took in that handsome face, then slowly lowered my gaze and whispered, "Yes." And just when he tried to follow up, I turned my head away. In Augustine's eyes, I was someone still holding on to feelings for Dominic, but clearly leaning toward him now. In Dominic's eyes, I was a lost love, a connection missed, and he wasn't willing to let it go. Then I felt it, a warm kiss brushing lightly against my ear. It tickled. My ears were sensitive. Just the slightest touch would make them flush red. Augustine looked at me, his gaze dark and unreadable. I stayed slouched on the desk, tilting my head toward him, and said softly, "I want to see Doe Ball tonight." Augustine paused for a moment, then nodded. Okay. Chapter 19. Tonight was filled with anticipation. Augustine planned to officially confess to me before Carolina returned to the country. Under the neon lights were clusters upon clusters of roses, and hidden nearby were discreet cameras. I was crouching down, just about to pick up the little white puppy running toward me when Augustine caught my hand. He looked at me tenderly, almost helplessly, and said, "Julia, it feels like that little tail-wagging puppy gets all your attention. I'm starting to feel jealous. Do you need me to wag my tail for you too?" He held me in a way that was gentle, but inescapable. His whispers near my ear were the kind only someone very practiced in love could say. From a distance, Dominic stood silently, swallowed by the shadows. I couldn't see his face. Not long ago, he had lost a project to Augustine at one of the Jean family's subsidiaries. The family intervened, again, and the deal fell through. Just like years before, whenever Dominic competed with Augustine, the family always backed the older brother. "Don't look at him, Julia. You're smart, and you're adorable, just a little disobedient." Augustine's voice was slow, steady, but the last line dropped heavy, a dark edge to it. I felt a twinge of fear and instinctively tried to call Dominic's name, but Augustine grabbed my chin, his eyes darkening with obsession. "Julia, you're more like that puppy than you realize. Clean, innocent, and pitiful. Wouldn't it be better for you to just stay by my side?" Obediently. With it? His eyes locked on mine, determined and possessive. Julia wouldn't fall for a dumb failure, right? His fingers brushed through my hair, those black strands sliding between his fingers as he leaned in. Slowly, confidently, he fully believed the victor always gets the prize. I wrapped my arms around his neck. His eyes lit up with triumph. Dominic clenched his fists. Without a word, he turned and walked away. And just as Augustine was about to kiss me, I gently placed a finger on his lips and whispered, "I'm sorry, Augustine. The reason I added you in the first place was because I mistook you for Dominic." I looked into his eyes, my expression full of soft emotion, while mentally reciting the script I'd prepared. "You reminded me so much of him, back then. I'm sorry. Here's the bracelet. It deserves someone better." Augustine's expression shattered. His once calm, confident face twisted into something darker. "Julia, is this a joke?" His voice trembled as jealousy cracked through his usual cold mask. I shifted slightly, positioning myself to face the hidden camera directly. With a deep, heartfelt tone, I confessed, "I'm sorry, but I'm still in love with Dominic." There was a pause. Then Augustine laughed, cold, chilling. He stroked my hair, voice coming through gritted teeth. "You really are like that ungrateful little mutt. I was the one who fed you, but you still chose him." Suddenly, I felt something was wrong. I backed away instinctively, panic rising. "Dominic." In fear, I called out his name, but Augustine grabbed me and pulled me into the car. And just like that, the lights outside went out. Silence engulfed everything. Augustine was never a good person. Now that the mask of gentleness and false kindness had slipped, he seemed downright sinister, like a ghost crawling out of a swamp, clutching my hand in his cold grasp. A stray mutt like him, finding such a beautiful flower out there? What a pity, he's not fit to be a gardener. "Augustine, you can't MMPH, I protested. Eyes filled with resistance. He ignored it completely, watching my struggle like it was part of the entertainment. Lowering his gaze, he said coldly, "Julia, if Dominic leaves the Jean family, He's nothing. Your friend said your family is buried in debt. Do you really want him to carry a mountain of it on his back just for you? With me, you can stay by his side forever. Isn't that the best of both worlds? I looked at him with tear-filled eyes. I choose me, Julia. People shouldn't be too greedy. He spoke with that same soft, soothing voice, but now, he no longer held back the distance between us. Even his posture radiated dominance and control. I bit my lip and nodded, as if surrendering. Now, kiss me, Julia. Augustine's voice dropped, low and steady. He stared into my eyes, relaxing his stance like he was waiting for his reward. I leaned forward slowly. Our noses brushed. He closed his eyes before I did. His lashes fluttered slightly, like the delicate flutter of a butterfly's wings. Strangely enough, he looked almost devout, even better at acting than me. Our lips just barely touched, like a dragonfly skimming the surface of water when the soft bark of Jean Doe, the little white dog in the car, broke the moment, clutching the pup like a helpless little flower. I looked up at Augustine with wide, vulnerable eyes. Is that enough, Augustine? He seemed pleased with my performance. Leaning in close, he whispered against my ear, "Good girl, from now on, don't listen to anyone else. Just remember this, starting today. I'm your boyfriend." Trapped in his arms, I forced myself to tremble like someone overtaken by fear. Apparently, Augustine liked this kind of obedient behavior. The next day, my bank card had 10 million more on it, with a clear note, "Voluntary gift." Wealth really can blind people. Everything about me was gradually taken over by Augustine. After classes, I'd be escorted straight back to the villa he bought near the school. His need for control was suffocating, bordering on obsession. I couldn't understand what Carolina saw in him. Was it just that polished mask of his? Or did she simply like men who knew how to pretend? Chapter 20. I opened the door and stared wearily at Dominic, who had just climbed in through the balcony. On the first day he found out I was with his brother. He'd apparently been devastated. To give him a bit of motivation, I very thoughtfully had someone send him the video of Augustine's public confession. He blocked me out of rage. What else could I do? As the innocent sweetheart everyone thought I was, all I could do was tear up, speak in half sentences, and let my sadness speak for itself when he came storming over. "Julia, I know it's me you really love. I've made up my mind. I'll be your secret boyfriend for now. But if you choose me, I swear I'll take you away from all of this." Dominic pulled a jade bracelet from his pocket. His expression was earnest, after all. In just 3 days, the outcome of Augustine's infamous wager would be revealed. Augustine had once arrogantly declared that he could make me willingly become his mistress. Too bad. Now it looked like someone else was playing that role instead. I tilted my head, looked at the bracelet, and smiled. "It's really pretty. Is it for me?" "It belonged to my mother," Dominic said softly. His face darkened as he gazed at the piece, then placed it firmly in my hand before I could say no. His voice was serious, almost solemn. "If I messed up before, Julia, will you forgive me? Just this once?" "Of course I can," I replied with a bright smile. "But you didn't mess up just once. You messed up twice." Whether I forgave him or not didn't make much of a difference to me. Dominic gently brushed his nose against the back of my hand, then rested his cheek there, eyes heavy with unspoken thoughts. Chapter 21. It was the second to last day before the wager deadline. Everyone was betting on whether Augustine would win this game. "Julia, you're just too lovable," Augustine murmured as he kissed my neck out of nowhere. Then, his expression turned cold as he looked out the window and gave an order to have the windows reinforced. I simply nodded politely. If I was loved by many, it was only because I worked very, very hard to maintain the image they loved. No one expected Augustine to go this far in his act. He even paid off all my debts. To keep the lie seamless, I'd even registered myself as a shareholder in a friend's company, pretending to almost become a person legally held liable for company debt. No matter how deeply Augustine investigated, all he'd find was a perfectly clean, innocent identity, and that was exactly what I needed. Chapter 22. The final day had finally arrived. Carolina couldn't wait to message me, eagerly anticipating my confession. On the open-air lawn of the club were cheap-looking flowers and candlelight. Carolina wore a red dress on purpose. Augustine had on the white shirt from the day we first met. Dominic stood quietly in the corner, while I, the supposed confessor, looked on calmly like a spectator. This confession had cost Augustine 2 voluntary exchanges to obtain, so of course I had to play along and pretend to help him win the bet. Julia, aren't you going to confess? Carolina looked at me, her eyes full of encouragement. I toyed with the flower in my hand and, in the silence, reached out to give it away. The crowd burst into laughter, and next to my ear, a soft voice whispered, "Really committed to being the side chick. Huh? Renting out the club just to chase someone, classic Augustine move." Augustine didn't refuse. He reached out to take the flower. Santiago slapped Dominic on the shoulder lazily. 30 million lost to your brother. Totally worth it. What a legendary moment. Ask your brother what kind of magic he used to make a naive girl fall for him so hard. The flower dropped to the ground. I turned to Santiago. I placed a bet on this game too. You know. Then I opened my mouth and spoke fluent, crystal clear French. I bet that they'd end up being my side pieces. According to the rules, I should be entitled to the full 30 million. Make sure it hits my account. Augustine, my math's not wrong, right? I looked directly at him, watching the composed affection in his eyes crumble bit by bit. The game was fun, but sadly, people are just too dumb. I smiled, dimples blooming beautifully. If I play the homewrecker alone, I get 30 million. Dominic agreed. What about you? Wanna be generous and help out? Be the second side piece and double my payout? Julie. Augustine had always been proud. After realizing what I meant, he stood there stunned for a second, then exploded like a furious lion. He was held back, but his eyes locked onto me like he wouldn't rest until he tore me apart. But I wasn't scared. I looked at Dominic, who was holding his brother back, and gave an innocent smile. That murderous glare? I'd seen it in his brother's eyes before too. I once told Dominic, if he helped me unconditionally today, I'd forgive him once, just as I expected. He did. My cousin added everyone into a group chat and turned the progress of this whole bet into a PowerPoint presentation that circulated around campus. One person passed it to 10 to 100, in less than 10 minutes. The PPT titled 30 million drama had spread through the entire social circle. Meanwhile, my family bought a trending topic slot, fueling the viral heat of the 30 million drama. The Jean family's stocks plummeted as they scrambled for PR, while under my name, the same white dress I wore sold out overnight. I don't need a whole lot of love, but I do need a whole lot of money. Seeing the notifications of incoming funds, I felt like all the emotional damage I endured had finally paid off. As the daughter who'd long lived under someone else's roof, I was always good at using every resource around me and turning anything into a stepping stone. The Jean family sent Dominic Jean to dig up dirt on me, but instead of finding my scandals, they dug up an old story, how Dominic had pushed me down the stairs as a child, breaking my leg. No matter how hard the Jean family worked on PR, I always managed to keep the upper hand. What do you want? They had someone reach out to me. They sent me a hospital report. Dominic had fractured his leg at the exact same spot, in addition to the hush money we agreed on before. I want an apology from both of them. By the time I received apologies from the two brothers, it was already 2 weeks later. Dominic limped, much thinner than before. Augustine looked sullen, like a venomous snake coiled and ready to strike. I ignored Augustine and returned the bracelet in my hand to Dominic. 2 pairs of eyes followed me, locked on. You planned all of this from the start, didn't you? It was all fake. In the silence, Dominic's voice broke through, still unwilling to accept defeat. I didn't respond. A failure doesn't deserve my attention, unless he still holds some value to exploit. The hibiscus flowers by the road were still in full bloom. Hibiscus doesn't see the dusk. It withers by sundown, because it blooms in the morning and falls by night. It's often called the flower of the dead, unloved and unwanted. But I love it. Its eternal cycle, its persistence through seasons, always blooming more brilliantly with every return. Familiar footsteps sounded behind me. Slow and hesitant, I kept walking, without looking back, not even once. Story 2. Chapter 1. The plane made a successful emergency landing. and the entire crew was celebrating their survival in the break room. At that moment, my boyfriend, Ryan, stood across from me, pulling a necklace from his pocket, his gaze intense. This necklace, he had bought it a few days ago, and I had accidentally seen the receipt. It wasn't cheap, though today was my birthday. Hadn't he promised not to make anything public? My heart pounded like a drum, nervous yet filled with anticipation. But then, I saw his gaze move past me, towards someone behind me, Roxana. When the plane went off course, I was terrified. I was afraid I wouldn't get the chance to say something. On his usually cold face, there was a rare flicker of tension. His voice wasn't loud, but it made everyone around hold their breath. And I seemed to forget how to breathe. My chest felt tight, aching with a mix of sourness and pain. The plane had gone off course, and we had been in a life-threatening situation. In that moment of life and death, my boyfriend's thoughts hadn't been about me. And now, he lightly pursed his lips, carefully choosing his words. "Will you be my girlfriend?" But the words weren't directed at me, the one who had been with him for 5 years. I remembered that Ryan disliked people who were unprofessional. He had once criticized me, saying that my posture when opening the emergency exit was wrong. In extreme conditions, you could fail to open the door properly and endanger the lives of all the passengers. His tone had been stern, but my heart had pounded excitedly. There was something so captivating about a serious man. So today, when I risked everything to open the escape hatch, it wasn't just because of my professional duty. I wanted to earn his approval, but reality is cruel. He hadn't noticed the terrified Roxana, her legs weak, blocking the emergency exit, crying uncontrollably. He had even carried her out of the break room himself and publicly confessed his feelings. How could he be so hypocritical? He must have been planning to break up with me for a long time. Chapter 2. Roxana, the new flight attendant, was originally in charge of opening the cabin door. Who would have thought that she'd collapse by the door, doing nothing but cry? Because her actions severely hindered the passengers' evacuation, I had to send her to the break room. No doubt she resents me for that, because now, with tearful eyes, she gazes at Ryan, shyly lowering her head. Then, she glances at me with a look of triumph before nodding demurely. "I'd love to. Congratulations. Congratulations." The room erupts into applause, and everyone is smiling happily. Everyone. Except for me, because I've just been cheated on and dumped so publicly. I can only hang my head in humiliation. A woman's intuition is usually spot on, and deep down, I had already sensed Ryan's growing indifference. We've been together for 5 years, and gradually, he stopped kissing me. The real alarm bells rang when a new flight attendant joined the company. She was sweet-looking, and the key detail, she had the same last name as our company's owner. Some colleagues had whispered rumors, wondering if Roxana's shortened internship period meant she had powerful connections. I brushed off their gossip, but Ryan must have taken it seriously. He began to approach Roxana deliberately, teaching her many things, step by step. I didn't understand why. When he already had a girlfriend, he'd go out of his way to help another woman. His explanation? "One day, we might be flying on the same crew. The stronger our colleagues are, the safer we'll be." Such a lie. I stayed quiet, not exposing him. In my memory, Ryan was someone who hated dealing with trouble, even with me, his girlfriend. He never bothered to teach me much. He probably forgot his own words. Teaching safety procedures to flight attendants is such a hassle. Turns out, sometimes the hassle goes away when the person changes. Chapter 3. People only leave when they've collected enough disappointment. Later on, I wasn't sure if Ryan didn't care about my feelings anymore or if he was trying to force me to break up with him. He always made sure our flight schedules were different. And then, when I called him, he'd say he was exhausted and going to sleep. He'd hang up quickly, and I had no choice but to send him a text, telling him I'd bought that model he loved so much. I was full of excitement, thinking it would make him happy, but he never replied. Later, I saw Roxana's post on her social media. Her caption read, "Watching a great movie with someone important." The picture showed 2 hands intertwined. How romantic. It was the movie I'd been wanting to watch with Ryan for a long time. But unfortunately, he never liked romance films. When I zoomed in, the mole on the ring finger of the larger hand stood out like a glaring truth. How ridiculous. The man who, just a moment ago, told his girlfriend he was too tired and needed to sleep, was now watching a movie with another woman. After finishing my flight, I wanted to confront Ryan. As I packed my luggage, I caught sight of that dress. I remembered that back when I was in my final year of college. Just before my internship, I had wanted to buy a dress for my interviews. When Ryan found out, he gave me one as a gift. At the time, I didn't know much about his financial situation. It wasn't until after graduation, when his roommate joked with me, "Zoe, when you're flying in first class one day, don't kick Ryan to the curb. He lived on instant noodles for 3 months just to buy you that dress. He didn't even splurge on the cup noodles." That's when I realized, this fool only had 400 yuan a month to live on, but he'd still bought me an expensive dress. He had even borrowed money to get it. My eyes stung. He used to want to give me the best of everything. So, maybe I should give him one more chance. Chapter 4. I arranged for the three of us to be on the same flight. And before departure, I hinted to him, I want to have a relationship in the open, under the sun. His gaze was dark and unreadable. But in the end, the answer became very clear. I gave up completely, determined to force this person, along with all the beautiful memories, out of my mind. What hurt the most was that while he had been with me, Ryan always used workplace relationships affect performance as an excuse not to go public with our relationship. Yet, after going public with Roxana, he was anything but low-key. He thoughtfully brought her breakfast and delivered it to her room. And, of course, I happened to run into them as I was heading to the restaurant. I didn't even bother looking at him and just walked straight ahead. To think that in the past, whenever I was dealing with jet lag and wanted to sleep in, I'd ask him to bring me breakfast. He was always too scared of being seen and never agreed. My heart shattered into pieces, and I never wanted to see him again. Yet he hurried after me, his expression calm as he said, "Let's talk." I didn't see the point in talking, nor did I accept his apology. From start to finish, I couldn't understand where I had lost to Roxana. Unable to hold back, I asked, "Ryan, do you actually want to date Roxana? Or is it that you want to date the boss's daughter?" Hearing this, he was visibly taken aback. He looked at me deeply, a trace of helplessness in his eyes. "Zoe, next month is the promotion exam. I don't want to be stuck in the cockpit forever. Just a small character being ordered around." I was confused. "With your skills, do you really need to use connections to become a captain?" He clearly had the ability to get promoted on his own, but unexpectedly, he gave a faint, defeated smile and sighed. "Zoe, you don't know where my ambitions lie. You can't compete with Roxana's family connections." My heart sank. I looked at him, and the person standing before me felt like a stranger. He was no longer the young man who spent all day in the library, believing that knowledge could change his fate. He had started weighing pros and cons, becoming an adult who treated the people around him as stepping stones, while everyone has the freedom to pursue their own path and choose their lifestyle. I no longer loved him. It was hard to find the right words of farewell. I turned and walked away without looking back. Chapter 5. That evening, the crew received a notification that the plane was to fly back without passengers. Unfortunately, we encountered severe turbulence again. The flight attendants were in chaos, and Roxana was crying and screaming, "Ryan, I'm so scared," as she tried to pull open the cockpit door. How can someone be this brainless? I went to stop her, telling her not to disturb the captain while he worked. She slapped me to the ground. "You've spoken to Ryan. You're jealous of me, aren't you?" This was the first time Roxana had been so blunt. So, she knew everything. I got up from the floor and commanded the other flight attendants to follow protocol. They hesitated, watching Roxana and me, frozen in place. Then, Roxana went mad, demanding they tie me up. "Zoe's bullying me. You guys help me teach her a lesson, and I'll tell my dad when we get back. He'll give you all a raise." So she really is the boss's daughter? Some of them looked tempted, actually reaching for a rope, but I stopped them with just a glance. "You want a raise? Well, you'll have to survive first." Are you sure you can operate the equipment and execute the emergency procedures correctly if you tie me up? Hearing this, they immediately flew back to their posts. Roxana shot me a venomous glare. She better hope I don't survive. Because if I do, I'll make sure she never steps foot on a plane again. Chapter 6. At 3 a.m., the plane veered off course once more. Inside the cabin, everyone was filled with despair. Roxana was crying and throwing a tantrum, screaming that she wanted to go home. She even demanded that I open the cabin door so she could jump with a parachute. At this moment, jumping would be suicide. She had absolutely no flight attendant training. Her crying was giving me such a headache that I wished I could tie her up and gag her. Ryan was out of his mind too. He opened the intercom from the cockpit, giving no instructions, just trying to comfort Roxana. Roxana, don't cry, we'll make it back alive. How could he be so distracted in a life-or-death situation? I couldn't stand this ridiculous couple anymore, so I grabbed the intercom and shouted at the cockpit. Captain, send an emergency radio distress signal. The boss's daughter is on board. If we keep drifting, we'll run out of fuel. Request mid-air refueling immediately, and clear the entire flight path. Also, request fighter jets to guide us back. I was scared I might die here, so I yelled everything I could think of. As soon as I finished speaking, someone quietly cried. The cost of that, headquarters would never agree. Clearing the entire flight path isn't something we can decide on our own. We're going to die, aren't we? More sobbing filled the cabin, and the cockpit remained silent. Could the captain have passed out? My fingers trembled with fear. Just then, Roxana ran over, seizing the opportunity to grab the intercom. Ryan, are you okay? I'm so scared. Sob, sob. My heart skipped a beat. Suddenly, the captain's deep voice came through. Flight attendant, what you mentioned has already been sent by the co-pilot. Don't be afraid, everyone. I will do my best to land this plane safely. Please trust me. Each word was firm and powerful. For the moment, I felt a bit of relief. Chapter 7. 10 minutes later, the grief still hadn't dissipated. Headquarters sent a message, JK-1009. All flight paths are being cleared, and all rescue planes have been dispatched. Please make sure to return safely. That one sentence made me burst into tears. At the same time, the flight attendants started gathering around Roxana, chattering excitedly. Roxana, the company really sent help. They're actually clearing all the flight paths. Of course! Roxana is the boss's daughter. A proper heiress. Exactly. Much better than some people who can only give useless orders. Contemptuous glances shot in my direction, as if I had done something shameful. I was baffled. In the face of power, so many people had chosen to abandon their dignity. I couldn't be bothered to argue with them and sat silently in my seat. But Roxana wasn't done with me. She lifted her chin smugly, like an arrogant princess. Calmly, she ordered, "Tie her up. Gag her mouth." The flight attendants eagerly pinned me down, tying me up like a crab. Shut up, head flight attendant. From now on, this place is under Miss Roxana's command. Chapter 8. I lost track of time, but eventually, Ryan's excited voice came over the intercom. Roxana, we've reached the designated flight path, and the plane is preparing to descend. And Roxana, don't be scared. His tone was tender and affectionate. Roxana basked in the attention, immediately grabbing the intercom to respond. Ryan, my legs are weak, you'll have to carry me down. Everyone around sighed in envy. I had no interest in watching their brainless behavior. I quietly shifted, trying to loosen the ropes, but they had tied me too tightly. After the plane came to a stop, Roxana even ordered them to throw me into the break room. Annoying people should stay in here and reflect. No way! I desperately kicked the door, trying to get someone's attention, but I could only watch helplessly as they all rushed out, one by one. Later, the cockpit door opened, and the captain and Ryan came out. The captain wasn't in great shape, stumbling as he made his way outside. He didn't notice me. As for Ryan, when he went to pick up Roxana from her seat, he clearly saw me, but he pretended not to. My heart sank into despair as I watched them walk away, disappearing from sight. But in the next moment, I saw someone familiar. He rushed over, tears streaming down his face as he untied me. Miss, I'm sorry I'm late. I shook my head and took his arm as we left the cabin. Down below, I saw a large crowd gathered. Among them, Ryan's face was full of regret, his expression complicated as he looked at me. Beside him, Roxana didn't dare to lift her head. Chapter 9. I didn't want to make a scene, so I quietly told Uncle Nestor, let everyone go rest. But he refused. As soon as his feet hit the ground, he angrily yelled at the middle-aged man who had come over, nodding and bowing. Investigate this thoroughly. I want to see who was so vicious as to tie up a colleague in the break room. Such cruelty. The middle-aged man seemed to know Roxana, and he looked a bit uneasy, trying to laugh it off. In an emergency, there's bound to be some irrational behavior. It might have been a misunderstanding. Roxana, seeing that the man was siding with her, immediately puffed up her chest and defended herself. Yes, I thought Zoe was in a bad mental state and was afraid she'd hurt herself, so I tied her up. The others chimed in. Yes, we were just doing it for her own good. For my own good? I stared at them coldly and said, if you're so determined to lie, let's check the black box. Fine. Check it. Roxana, stubborn as ever, even feigned being wronged. Just because you're the head flight attendant doesn't mean you should throw your weight around and falsely accuse us. Throwing my weight around? I scoffed. Weren't you the one claiming to be the boss's daughter? Who's really throwing their weight around? My words were like a bomb, causing everyone's expressions to change. Uncle Nestor frowned and immediately arranged for someone to retrieve the black box. Ryan, however, volunteered. I'll go. I had no objections, and the middle-aged man nodded. Ryan hurried off. When he came back, he said, the black box is damaged. It seemed he had chosen Roxana after all. At the same time, the middle-aged man made the final decision. Everyone is tired. Go rest for now. We'll investigate this matter later. Uncle Nestor was so angry his mustache bristled. Once we landed, they weren't afraid anymore. I told Uncle Nestor to go ahead, assuring him he didn't need to worry about me. He looked back at me 3 times before finally leaving. As I was walking away, Roxana deliberately bumped into me, her expression arrogant. I thought you had some serious connections. All bark and no bite. I bumped her right back. Why don't you try me? Chapter 10. I had my own plan. I asked Uncle Nestor to look into the background of the middle-aged man. He was the CEO's secretary, Kevin. What I didn't know was if the CEO was a principled man. If Roxana really was Nestor's daughter, then wouldn't Nestor's people have to be taken down? The higher-ups organized a debriefing meeting to discuss this flight's events. Nestor came in person. He focused solely on the cause of the incident, completely avoiding any mention of Roxana tying me up. Of course, he's the boss. Even the CEO has to answer to him. His daughter tying someone up? That's nothing. Honest people never get justice. I slammed my hands on the table and stood up, addressing everyone present. Is it possible for a black box to be damaged when the plane hasn't crashed? Everyone exchanged looks, but no one spoke up. Finally, the captain muttered softly, no, it's not possible, but his voice was quickly drowned out by the CEO's cough. Seeing that I wouldn't let this go, Roxana began to play the victim. Head flight attendant. I only did it because you seemed too agitated. If you're upset, well, you can tie me up too. Before she could finish, Ryan eagerly jumped in as her protector. He gave me a cold look. Zoe, it was wrong of me to let you down, but you shouldn't take it out on Roxana. That absurd comment made it seem like I was overreacting. Furious, I sneered. You're not even worth it. The room fell silent. Nestor gave us all a meaningful look before focusing on me. His tone was gentle, but his words weren't. Right or wrong, we can't just take your word for it. The black box is damaged. And that's that. If you're not satisfied, you can resign. Ha! In this world, do people without connections have to swallow injustice and suffer in silence? I met Nestor's gaze directly and asked, are you really going to use your power to bully someone like me? Nestor smiled but said nothing. Roxana seized the moment and added, if you kneel and apologize, I can be magnanimous and forgive you. Really? I feigned weakness. acting like I was scared of losing my job. I turned to Nestor. If I apologize, I won't have to quit. He thought about it briefly, not wanting to embarrass Roxana, and nodded. Perfect. I took out my phone and made a call. Mom, someone's bullying me. Chapter 11. Ryan once said that I couldn't compete with Roxana's connections. He didn't know my real strength was competing with my mom. Uncle Nestor is a senior executive at another airline. As the saying goes, what happens on the east side doesn't affect the west side. So, people give him respect, but not total respect. But my mom? That's a different story. Originally, I never wanted to be that spoiled rich second generation who threw their weight around. The most I ever did was ask my mom to help Ryan when he was stressed about the deputy captain position. I remember my mom said at the time, "Sweetheart, if he needs me to pull strings for a deputy captain position, then this man doesn't have enough talent." Sadly, I was so blinded by love that I only focused on how hard things were for Ryan. Looking back now, resources are important, but for technical positions, it's the skill that matters. Take the captain we flew with on this trip. He worked his way up from the bottom. If Ryan was willing to put his heart into it, his future could have been bright. Chapter 12. I was lost in thought when Roxana sneered. "Oh, calling your mom, are we? And who is your mom, anyway? Last time you sent some old man here. He was all bluster, but nothing more. Stop putting on airs and wasting our time." When the little princess spoke, of course, people had to act. The CEO glanced at me and immediately announced, "Zoe, is it? You're fired. Now pack your things and leave." He promptly called in security, who were ready to drag me out. Most of the people in the room looked at me like they were watching a show. How humiliating. I waved the guards away and pushed them off. I can walk out on my own. Just then, the door swung open. My mom walked in, flanked by two burly men, and shouted in a commanding voice, "I'd like to see who dares to bully my daughter." Others didn't recognize my mom, but Nestor did. His face turned pale, and he immediately stood up. But Roxana, clueless as ever, ran up and pointed at my mom, demanding that security throw her out. My mom has quite the temper. She grabbed Roxana by the shoulder and slapped her twice. Hard. "I'm educating you on behalf of your father. And what gives you the right?" Roxana was stunned, staggering back a few steps, helplessly looking at Nestor. At that moment, Nestor dropped to his knees, sliding toward my mom. "Darling, I'm sorry. I didn't know she was your daughter." My mom ignored him, walking straight to Ryan, her presence commanding, and asked coldly, "Can the black box be fixed?" Ryan, knowing when to submit, quickly nodded. "It can be." The CEO, no stranger to power, didn't know who my mom was but quickly got up and offered her his seat. "Please, madam, have a seat." My mom didn't sit. Everyone else immediately stood up, almost in unison. It was amusing. I watched my mom with admiration. It's great to have both money and power. The black box wasn't damaged at all. Everything that happened with Roxana ordering people to tie me up was replayed in full detail. My mom was furious and demanded that everyone involved be fired on the spot. But I thought that was unnecessary, mainly because I hadn't gotten my revenge yet. So I quickly spoke up. "Let's not go too far. Just handle the situation fairly." My mom gave me a surprised look, not quite understanding my plan. But Roxana still had some spirit left. Seeing that her father couldn't outmatch my mom, she decided to storm out on her own. "Don't try to scare me with being fired. I'll quit. I'll fire all of you first." How ridiculous. For once, I had the upper hand, and I wasn't about to let go. I let my full power show. "If you dare quit, take your dad with you and get out, and go starve in the streets." I knew my mom had the power to make this happen. She doted on me, and without hesitation, shot Nestor a warning look. Nestor, being an experienced veteran of the game, knew the advantages of relying on others. Immediately, he grabbed Roxana by the head and forced her to apologize to me. He even threatened her. "You're the one who made the mistake. If you don't repent, don't blame me for cutting off your cards." Roxana was stunned. She couldn't believe that her doting father would force her to apologize. Crying hysterically, She ran toward Ryan, trying to grab his hand for support. But Ryan wasn't going to help her either. He subtly moved out of her reach. Heartbroken, Roxana, with no other choice, stiffened her neck and begrudgingly apologized to me. I thought about letting it go, not wanting to push her too far. But my mom wasn't satisfied. She let out a cold snort. Who was it that said you'd kneel down and apologize? Roxana's face turned pale. Nestor, however, was quick to act. He signaled the two bodyguards, who firmly pressed his precious daughter down on her knees. I couldn't help but think, when you have money, you can really do whatever you want. Chapter 13. After Roxana knelt and apologized, the rest of the room fell silent, terrified. My mom, possibly understanding my intent, asked the CEO to give a reasonable punishment without firing anyone. He nodded repeatedly and deducted some money from those who had wronged me. Then, with a beaming smile, he cautiously asked if that was enough. His demeanor was completely different from the impatient way he had wanted to have security escort me out earlier. I nodded, maintaining a dignified tone, and said, "The punishment isn't the goal. The main thing is to create a harmonious working environment for all the flight attendants." At that moment, the room erupted into enthusiastic applause. As if on cue, everyone's facial expressions were perfectly controlled. It made me feel sick. After this incident, I transferred to another department and stopped flying. As an only child, my mom had never agreed with me becoming a flight attendant, but I had been stubborn, wanting to stay close to Ryan. In the past, I'd hidden my wealthy background, hoping to find someone who loved me for who I was. Now, all I wanted was to smoothly take over my mom's business and settle my scores. After being promoted to management, I implemented strict training protocols. I was determined not to allow unqualified flight attendants to work. Later, I deliberately assigned Ryan, Roxana, and her group of sycophants to the same flight. I didn't need to say much after that. Of course, I didn't have to. People in the workplace are smart. Previously, the flight attendants fawned over Roxana, hoping to curry favor and gain benefits. Now that they knew I was the true heiress, they were sure to find ways to flatter me instead. And wasn't my arrangement clear enough? Soon enough, the flight attendants began subtly but deliberately excluding Roxana. They assigned her the dirty and tiring tasks, bossing her around. During this time, Ryan came to see me once, but not to plead for Roxana. He wanted to win me back. He wore a shirt I had given him and brought a bouquet of my favorite flowers. Kneeling on one knee, "Zoe, can I court you again?" "Of course not." I looked at him coldly, as if he were nothing but trash. "Ryan, do you really want to pursue me? Or are you just trying to pursue the boss's daughter?" "That's right. My mom owns all the airlines. Nestor is just a figurehead." When the plane went off course, and I said the boss's daughter was on board, Nestor couldn't have cleared the entire airspace. Everything happened because I was on that plane. My mom didn't hesitate to lose millions for me. Chapter 14. All feelings may be false, but my mom's love for me is real. I grew impatient listening to Ryan's explanation. He looked at me with sorrowful eyes, muttering softly, "Why did you hide your identity? I could have had both love and a promising future." I stepped back, creating distance between us. Maybe that gesture was too obvious in showing my disdain. I had always been warm and enthusiastic toward him before. The stark contrast was too much for him. He grabbed my hand, agitated, and began shouting, "I was sincere with you. Didn't you feel it? In college, wasn't I good enough for you? I starved for days just to buy you that dress. Do you even know how long I went without eating? Why did you have to test me like this? Some men are laughable. They can abandon you, leave you behind. But you're supposed to wait there, incapable of moving on." I was completely disgusted and told Ryan, "Let's part ways amicably. Don't make me lose all respect for you. I'll pay you back for that dress, tenfold." As I spoke, I immediately pulled out my phone and transferred the money. That was the final cut. He gave me a sorrowful look but, without hesitation, rejected the payment. "Why are you being so heartless? You know you still love me." I gave up trying to reason with this madman and turned to leave. He wasn't ready to give up, shouting after me, "Zoe, I'll become the Ryan who stands on his own again. You'll see. I shook my head. I'm not waiting. Chapter 15. Ryan was always quick to act. He quit his job and went to apply at another airline. Little did he know, all the companies he applied to were owned by my mother. When she called me to ask, should I blacklist him? I thought for a moment. I'm curious. I said, let's see how far he can go on his own. My mom chuckled. Then we'll indulge my precious daughter's curiosity. Thank you, Mom. After hanging up, I made several reform proposals in the company. The CEO approved them immediately. Meanwhile, Roxana stormed into my office. Her face twisted in anger. She knocked everything off my desk onto the floor in a fit of rage. Zoe, you've gone too far. I only tied you up. I didn't kill you. Do you really need to go this far to target me? Did you force Ryan to quit? Did you make him break up with me? You have everything. So why do you have to take him too? This girl, her intelligence really has limits. I stared at her pitiful, unhinged state and laughed coldly. Roxana, you knew who I was from the start, didn't you? You went after Ryan on purpose, didn't you? After my father died, my mom remarried Nestor. Looking at Roxana's age, it's clear she was born before my mom and Nestor got married. My mom doesn't know about her, but my mom once told me, sweetheart, everything your father and I own will go to you. She had the foresight to sign a prenuptial agreement. Therefore, my mom could ensure that Nestor wouldn't get a penny of her wealth. What I didn't understand was why Roxana came after me. How did she even know my identity? My mom had always been careful to keep Nestor from ever meeting me. That's how I was able to live a normal life without being recognized. And Nestor didn't know who I was either. I had thought Roxana had some sort of master plan. I even tried to lure her into revealing her intentions. Tell me what you know, and I'll let you go. But instead, she broke down, crying her heart out. Who knew who you were? My dad said his wife favored Ryan and that he might even be her son. And besides, Ryan was the one who came onto me. Your breakup has nothing to do with me. Why are you taking it out on me? As Roxana unleashed her emotions, everything fell into place. Suddenly, it all made sense. I realized it must have been that time when my mom pulled some strings for Ryan that Nestor misunderstood. So, Nestor didn't even know if my mom's child was a son or a daughter. And Ryan and Roxana? They were both playing their own games, each scheming for their own ends. It's no wonder they broke up so quickly. As someone who sticks to my word, I told her, you can resign now. But Roxana took an unexpected route. I still want to be a flight attendant, and you better not keep targeting me. Stop putting me on flights with them. I want a promotion. I want to serve in first class. I looked at her, confused. Seeing that I didn't reply, she started shouting again. My dad has been with your mom for so many years, and I never had a father figure growing up. Don't push me too far. Oh, I've never been the type to back down when someone gets tough with me. So I shot back. You've had food and shelter all your life, and it was all thanks to my mom's money. If you're so desperate for fatherly love, why don't you take him back? After all, he's old now and doesn't have the charm to attract my mom anymore. Roxana was furious, grinding her teeth. What do you take my father for? I smirked. What do you think? You. She couldn't come up with anything else, pointing at me and stammering you repeatedly. Foolish people always love finding ways to make their lives more difficult. With a wave of my hand, I assigned her to low-cost flights. The moment she said she wanted to serve in first class, I knew exactly what she was after. She wanted to stay on as a flight attendant to snag a rich man and turn the tables on me? Dream on! Chapter 16. Once Roxana was sent to work on budget flights, she couldn't stir up any trouble. She was miserable but didn't dare quit. I didn't feel a bit of sympathy and continued pushing for more company reforms. 5 years later, Ryan became a captain based on his own merits and remained single. When he appeared in front of me again, he was still as handsome as ever. He held 2 movie tickets, hoping to invite me to see a film. It was a typical romance movie, the sequel to one we had wanted to watch before. What was he trying to do? If 5 years ago, he had been willing to see that movie with me, if he had been willing to make our relationship public, maybe by now, we would have been married. But unfortunately, late affection is worth less than dirt. And even more so when that affection is mixed with ulterior motives. I advised him not to waste his time. You're a successful man now. Go find someone you like and live your life. He shook his head, his expression darkening. In the end, he even started crying. Zoe, I made one mistake. Do I really deserve a death sentence for that? I nodded. A good horse never goes back to graze on old pastures. Chapter 17. 2 more years passed, and my mom handed over all her businesses for me to manage. Nestor was not happy about it and constantly tried to sabotage me. My mom said, "Men can come and go, but I only have one daughter." With her support, I pushed him out of the company and she divorced him. But desperate and with nothing left, Nestor lost it. He attempted to have me kidnapped. I had already taken precautions, so there was no way he could succeed. What I didn't expect was for Ryan to suddenly show up and take a stab wound for me. Although the wound wasn't fatal, it ended his career. Why did he do it? Because of that stab, the kidnappers Nestor had hired were arrested, and they turned him in. Nestor was sentenced to 10 years in prison. As for Roxana, after her father lost all his money, she continued spending lavishly. Eventually, she ended up selling her body just to afford luxury goods. It was a sad outcome. I sent Ryan plenty of supplements and even offered him a management position in the company. To my surprise, he turned it down. He used to say, "You don't know where my journey will end." Now he says, "My journey ends with you." I smiled, blocked him, and left to travel abroad with my mom. Our journey has no end.